Think twice before you accept the life handed to you. The cost may be your soul. They will live 80 years and never touch freedom. They will breathe, work, eat, sleep, raise children, retire, and die without ever realizing they were imprisoned from the start, not by metal bars or armed guards, but by ideas, by beliefs, by unchallenged assumptions wrapped in routines. This is the most dangerous kind of prison, the one you can't see, the one you're convinced isn't even there. Because if they can convince you you're already free, you'll never look for the key. You'll decorate the cell. You'll compare your cage to others. You'll call it safety. You'll call it adulthood. You'll even mock the ones who dare to escape it. Most people will never be free, not because freedom is rare, but because slavery is familiar. It begins early. A parent's warning, a teacher's scolding, a system's structure. You are shaped to obey before you can think. You are taught what to believe, but not how to believe. You are handed goals without purpose, titles without meaning, a name without self. And slowly, layer by layer, you become a model citizen of your own confinement. Napoleon Hill warned us in Outwitting the Devil that there is a force in this world designed to keep you asleep. A force that does not need violence or force to dominate. Only your compliance. It is the silent hypnotist, the architect of your unconscious routines. And if you are not intentional, you are already under its control. This is not paranoia. This is not conspiracy. This is the structure of human captivity and the strange comfort it offers. The question is not, are you free? The real question is, who benefits from you believing that you are? What if your job, your ambitions, even your personality are not yours? What if your entire life is the product of a carefully laid maze, designed not to imprison your body, but to pacify your mind? This script is not about motivation. It is about confrontation. We are not here to feel better. We are here to see clearer. Because you cannot escape a prison you've come to admire. You cannot rise from a system you still believe in. And the greatest tragedy isn't that most people are not free. It's that most people don't want to be. They want the illusion. They want the comfort. They want the cage, as long as it looks like a castle. But for the few, for the very few who feel something burning behind the silence, who suspect there is more than this, this is your mirror. This is your moment. This is the sound of the lock beginning to break. Perfect. Now we enter the first chamber of the mind. There are no guards, no shackles, no barbed wire. Just a soft, consistent voice whispering, stay where it's safe. This is the genius of the modern prison. It doesn't punish you with force. It rewards you with comfort. But make no mistake, it is still a prison. You weren't born with these walls. You inherited them. Brick by brick, they were placed around you. Not by villains, but by the very people who thought they were protecting you. Your parents, taught by theirs, taught you to color inside the lines. Your teachers gave you answers, not questions. Your culture told you who you are before you ever got the chance to discover it yourself. And what did you learn? That success means security, that risk is reckless, that obedience is virtue, that the only truth is the one approved by the system you didn't build. You learn not to think, but to repeat, not to explore, but to conform, not to listen inward, but to obey outward. You were given a script and told it was identity. But here's what they didn't tell you. Freedom has nothing to do with money, travel, or time. Freedom is mental sovereignty. The ability to choose your thoughts, to direct your life, to become the author of your existence. And that's exactly what most people never develop, because freedom requires the death of comfort. It requires you to question everything, especially the things that feel safest. Most people don't want truth. They want permission. They want a life that looks free, but doesn't demand the responsibility of true liberty. That's why they decorate their cage. They get promotions. They buy houses. They chase titles, but beneath the surface, they're still locked inside a story they never wrote. The majority of people permit themselves to be dominated by the circumstances of their daily lives. They are bound by the habits of their environments. This is what Hill called hypnotic rhythm, the natural law by which habits, thoughts, and repeated choices become locked in place. After a while, the rhythm takes over. You don't think. You don't question. You just repeat. It feels normal. It feels right, but it's not freedom. It's autopilot. And autopilot, over time, becomes destiny. Symbolic image. The invisible cell. Imagine a man standing in a field. No walls, no fences. Yet he never steps beyond a certain invisible line. Why? Because he's been conditioned to believe that going further is dangerous. He's been shocked so many times for questioning the rules that now he doesn't even try. The cage isn't there anymore, but it doesn't need to be. The fear is the wall. The memory is the guard. The self-doubt is the lock. And the worst part? He doesn't even know he's in a prison. He thinks he's free. This is the average person's life. They wake up. They follow the program. They comply, all while calling it freedom. But the map they're following isn't theirs. It was handed to them by a system that rewards conformity and punishes originality, by a world that labels the thinkers as dangerous, the rebels as irresponsible, the sovereigns as selfish. And so, slowly, they learn to suppress their own power. Not because they're weak, but because it's safer. Because real freedom threatens the order, and the order fears nothing more than the awakened man. The price of faked freedom, there's a reason people mock the ones who escape. There's a reason the dreamer is called naive. The entrepreneur is called lucky. The nonconformist is called crazy. Because their freedom is a mirror. It reflects what others chose not to become. And rather than face their own silence, they point fingers. They laugh. They justify. They would rather ridicule the rebel than confront their own chains. But here's the truth most people will never admit. They don't hate your freedom. They envy it. Because deep down, they feel the walls too. A moment of truth pause here. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what part of my life feels assigned, not chosen? Is it your job, your beliefs, your circle, your identity? What parts of you are the result of habit, not truth? Don't answer quickly. Don't defend it. Just observe it. Because until you see the cell, you can't find the key. And no one escapes a prison they won't admit they're in. Not everyone is ready for this kind of honesty. But you wouldn't still be here if part of you didn't know. Something has been off. Something's been calling. Something deeper is asking to be seen. This is the beginning of sovereignty, not rebellion, not violence, not ego, but awakening. Excellent. We now descend into the deeper architecture, not of the prison, but of the mind that accepts it. No prison can exist without a builder. And the cruelest builder is the one you never suspect. You. It doesn't start with outside control. It starts with inside surrender. Not in a moment, but over time. Subtle, gradual, silent. You surrender the questions, then the risks, then the voice, then finally the will. Not because you're weak, but because no one taught you how not to drift. Hypnotic rhythm. The devil's blueprint in Outwitting the Devil. Napoleon Hill names the force behind your slow descent into mental slavery. Hypnotic rhythm, it is the law of repetition. The pattern that cements behavior into unconscious reflex. It begins when you let decisions make themselves. When you repeat actions without intention. When you follow the familiar, simply because it's familiar. You tell yourself, I'll try harder tomorrow. But tomorrow never comes because the rhythm already owns you. Your mind, once a forge of possibility, becomes a track. Looping the same thoughts, beliefs, and reactions endlessly. You are no longer choosing. You are echoing. And here's the terrifying truth. After enough repetition, you will defend your cage. Because the mind protects what it repeats. Even if it's killing you. The internal programmer, imagine your mind as a silent operating system. Each belief is a line of code. Each fear is a firewall. Each excuse is a virus designed to freeze action. And who programmed it? The teacher who said, "You're not that smart." The parent who warned, "That's too risky." The authority figure who told you, "Stay in your place." At first, you questioned them. But over time, repetition carved their words into your nervous system. And now you say those things to yourself. You're too old. You're not ready. This isn't the right time. People like me don't do that. They don't even sound foreign anymore. They sound like you. But it isn't you. It's the architect of your cage speaking through your voice. The devil, as Hill wrote, doesn't wear horns. He speaks in agreement. Drifting, the invisible trance Hill warned. Drifting is the cause of all failure. Not drugs, not war, not even poverty. Drifting, the slow, numbing surrender of decision. You drift into careers. You drift into relationships. You drift into belief systems. And one day, you look around and realize you never chose this life. You just didn't resist it. You followed the river of what was expected until it became a waterfall you could no longer reverse. Most people don't crash because they're evil. They crash because they stop steering. The tragedy of drifting is not just what you lose, but who you never become. Symbolic image. The room of echoes, picture this. A vast, empty room. Each time you speak, your voice echoes. But you don't realize it's your own voice coming back. You think it's confirmation, validation, truth. So you keep speaking, and the room keeps repeating, until eventually, you stop speaking altogether. You just listen to the echoes. That's what happens when you drift. Your inner world becomes a chamber of repeated thoughts, old fears, old beliefs, old programming. And now you're no longer thinking. You're recycling. It feels familiar. It feels safe. It even feels wise. But it's not wisdom. It's echo. The same thoughts dressed up in different circumstances, looping like a ghost tape. And you wonder why nothing changes. The whisper of awareness, but then something stirs. A whisper, a crack in the pattern, a book, a breakdown, a loss. A mentor, a moment of stillness, and for a split second, you see it. You see the trance. You see the programming. You feel the weight of everything you've called normal and realize it's not. It never was. And the moment you see it, you are no longer fully under its spell. This is the beginning of liberation. But be warned, awareness doesn't undo rhythm. It simply reveals the work ahead. The fire of decision to break hypnotic rhythm, you must ignite something stronger. Definiteness of purpose. It's not motivation. It's not feeling. It's decision backed by identity. You must decide who you are. Decide what you will no longer tolerate. Decide to stop drifting and start steering. Even if you don't know the full destination, your direction becomes the weapon that breaks the trance. Most will hesitate. They'll return to the rhythm because it's easier. But if you're still listening now, you already know you were not built for easy. You were built to wake up. Legacy reflection. Let me ask you something most avoid. If a stranger lived exactly as you did, same habits, same thoughts, same excuses, where would they be in 5 years? Would they be free? Or still stuck in the same loops? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, good. Discomfort is clarity in disguise. And clarity is the first cut in the wall. You cannot change what you will not confront. And you cannot confront what you keep justifying. So ask yourself, where am I drifting? What lie do I keep repeating? What would I become if I replace repetition with decision? Read that again, slowly. Let it burn through the rhythm. Because that burn, that's not fear. That's the fire of your soul. Remembering who it is, and no architect can contain that. We now reach a dangerous territory. The menu was printed before you walked in. You think you have options. You think you're choosing. You think your opinions, your ambitions, your plans are uniquely yours. But what if they aren't? What if they were programmed long before you ever questioned the script? What if your freedom was only a costume? The cosmic stage play Imagine a Theater? You're handed a costume at birth. You're assigned a role: student, worker, consumer, citizen. You're taught your lines. You're rewarded for saying them correctly. And slowly, you become the character. You forget it's a play. You forget you ever had a say. You pursue success, but someone else defined what that means. You chase happiness, but someone else sold you the map. You form beliefs, but someone else planted the seed. And the most dangerous part, you defend it. You say, this is just who I am. But is it? Or is it who you've been taught to be by a system that profits from your unconscious participation? Inherited thoughts, inherited lives. Most people don't think, they inherit. They inherit fears from their parents. They inherit values from their culture. They inherit ambition from advertising. And then they spend their entire life chasing something they never truly wanted, just to prove to people they don't even like that they're enough. That's not choice. That's mimicry. Monkey see, monkey do. Human see, human become. Napoleon Hill warned, any idea, plan, or purpose may be placed in the mind through repetition of thought. So the question is not are you thinking? The question is, who is doing the repeating? Programmed desires think of the average man. He wants money. He wants respect. He wants success. But where did those definitions come from? Is money a tool or an identity? Is success a measure or a mask? Is respect earned or demanded through illusion? He spends his life working for a house he rarely rests in, drives a car that sits in traffic, buys clothes to impress people who aren't looking. He goes into debt to look like he's free. But he's not choosing, he's performing, and deep down, he knows it. But to admit it would be to unravel the entire persona. And most people are too fragile to face that kind of truth. So they protect the illusion. Symbolic image. The mirror with nitrogen monoxide reflection. Imagine standing before a mirror, but instead of your reflection, you see fragments, pieces of your father's voice, your culture's expectations, your high school bullies, a quote from a self-help book, an image from Instagram, a label someone once gave you, and all of it pretending to be you. You squint, you search, you reach, but your true self is hidden beneath layers of borrowed identity. That's what most people call personality, but it's not you. It's a collage of survival strategies and social programming dressed up as authenticity. And until you question every piece, you will never know who you truly are. The chains of normal. Just be realistic. Play it safe. Don't rock the boat. Stay in your lane. Grow up. These are not words of wisdom. They are the commandments of the unconscious. They keep you inside the boundaries. They keep you predictable, pacified, profitable. The system doesn't need you free. It needs you functional. Buy, obey, work, complain, repeat. They call this life, but it's only existence. And when you dare to step out, when you question, risk, or rise, you are labeled as unstable, dangerous, arrogant, delusional. Because your liberation threatens the entire illusion. If you can break free, what excuse do they have? The first true choice, so what? Then is freedom? It's not a destination. It's not a bank balance. It's not a status. Freedom is the power to define your own values and live by them. It is the courage to reject the default script. It is to ask, is this mine? Do I believe this because it's true or because it's familiar? If no one expected anything of me, who would I become? These are the forbidden questions. Not because they're bad, but because they are dangerous to the illusion, and that's why most people never ask them. They'd rather be accepted than awakened. They'd rather be admired for who they pretend to be than isolated for who they are. But here's what they don't realize. Pretending is a slow death. The hidden door buried beneath the layers of noise is a single quiet door. It's not marked by neon signs or viral slogans. It doesn't scream for attention. It whispers. It says, "There's more, but you'll have to leave what's known. You'll have to walk alone. You'll have to question everything you've ever called me." Few open it. Fewer walk through. But those who do never come back the same, because on the other side of the illusion is the life you were born for. Not the one handed to you. Not the one sold to you. The one you chose. Fully. Freely. Finally. Now we begin to revolt. Not with noise. Not with fists. Not with anger. But with awareness. Because every true revolution begins in silence. The kind that shatters illusions from within. You won't see it on the news. There are no banners. No speeches. No parades. But it's happening. One by one, quietly, the awakened are leaving the system. Not physically, yet. But mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They are unplugging. Detaching. Reclaiming what was stolen. Not their money. Not their time. But something far more powerful. Their inner authority. The moment the world goes quiet, it begins with a subtle moment. No lightning. No fireworks. Just stillness. A pause in the routine. A question that doesn't go away. A discomfort that no longer fades with distraction. It could be triggered by failure, by heartbreak, by loss, or simply by silence. And in that moment, you see it. The job that's draining you. The life that doesn't fit. The dream that was never yours. It hits like a whisper, not a scream. But it's enough. Because once you see, you can't unsee. The rebellion has begun. Symbolic image. The temple of noise. Imagine a grand temple. Every wall covered in screens. Every corridor echoing with slogans. Do more. Be more. Buy this. Follow that. Chase this dream. Inside, thousands gather, smiling, scrolling, performing. They call it life. But it's theater. Now picture someone who stops. Just stops. They don't leave yet, but they turn off their screen. They unplug their ears. They stop responding to the noise. The temple doesn't collapse. It doesn't even notice. But inside that one person, something ancient awakens. That is the silent rebellion. Detachment. The first act of war. Most people believe rebellion is action. But the first true act is detachment. Not apathy. Clarity. You begin to observe without absorbing. You hear the noise, but you don't react. You see the patterns, but you don't dance. You stop needing to be right. You stop needing to be seen. You stop trying to win in games that don't matter. And something incredible happens. You reclaim space. Mental space. Emotional space. Spiritual space. Space to think. To feel. To hear your own soul again. And the more space you reclaim, the more truth returns. The warrior Awakens Hill spoke of two minds, the drifting mind and the definitive mind. Drifters follow. Definitive minds lead themselves. But to lead yourself, you must first go within. You must look into the darkness you've avoided, the questions that make your hands shake, the doubts that have been whispering for years. This is not a rebellion against the world. It's a rebellion against the false self, the mask, the persona, the programmable ego. This is the warrior's path, not of violence, not of conquest, but of self-possession. You become the master of your own house, not in arrogance, in awareness. And from that place, you no longer need approval. You no longer seek validation. You no longer chase permission, because you are the authority now. The loneliness of truth. But here's what they won't tell you about awakening. It's lonely, not forever, but at first. Because when you unplug from the matrix, you unplug from the herd. You stop relating to the gossip. You stop finding joy in the distractions. You stop pretending you care about the things that used to define you. And that silence, it's terrifying. But inside that silence is your rebirth. Because only when everything false falls away can what's real emerge. Symbolic image. The rebirth in the ashes. Picture a forest charred by fire. Everything gone. Everything black. Still quiet. But then, through the ash, a single green shoot. New life. Not born in the noise. Not forced by the system. But natural. True. Real. This is you. Not the persona. Not the programming. Not the survival mask. But the you that was buried beneath the noise all along. And now, it's breaking through. What comes next? Once you wake up, there's no going back. You may walk through the same world, but you'll see it differently. You'll hear the lies in the commercials. You'll feel the emptiness in the performance. You'll smell the fear in the obedience. And you'll realize you were never crazy. You were always awake, just waiting for the silence to speak. And now it has. So the question becomes, will you go back to sleep, or will you rebuild your life from truth? Because this rebellion, it's not just about freedom. It's about becoming the kind of person who cannot be caged again. Not because you escape, but because you remember who you are. Now comes the moment of reckoning. Freedom sounds beautiful until you understand the price. Most want the results of sovereignty. Few want the sacrifices that forge it. This is the part where most turn back, where comfort becomes more seductive than growth, but not you. You came to see the truth, and truth demands everything. Freedom is not given, it is earned. And not through rebellion, but through responsibility. There is no freedom without cost, no sovereignty without suffering, no clarity without burning away what clouds it. The price of true freedom is not money. It's not time. It's the death of who you were trained to be. The great trade, you must trade comfort for courage, validation for solitude, approval for truth, control for surrender, and most painfully, illusion for vision. True freedom begins the moment you stop outsourcing your authority. But to do that, you must stop blaming, stop waiting, stop excusing. You must look life in the eye and say, this is mine. All of it. The pain, the failure, the confusion, the choice, the power. And that scares people. Because it's easier to be a victim of the system than the creator of your life. It's easier to say, they never taught me, than to rise and teach yourself. But make no mistake, the system didn't just fail you. It trained you to fail yourself. And now, you're standing at the crossroads. One road leads back to safety, sameness, sedation. The other leads forward to solitude, struggle, and sacred transformation. Only one leads to freedom. Symbolic image, the narrow path picture a vast mountain range. At the base, crowds gather, laughing, resting, watching. They speak of dreams, of change, of escape. But only a few begin to climb, and even fewer reach the top. The path is narrow. The winds are brutal. The nights are cold. But something calls them upward. Not success, not applause, not ego, but truth. The silent knowing that there is more, and it must be found. That is the price. The willingness to lead the crowd. To walk alone. To suffer without losing yourself. That is what separates the awakened from the aware. Because awareness is easy. Action is expensive. The internal burden. Most people believe freedom is external. The right to speak, move, earn. But internal freedom is the final frontier. Can you silence the noise and hear your own voice? Can you resist your impulses and respond with intention? Can you stand in discomfort without needing distraction? That is the warrior's work. To face yourself when there's no one left to blame. To own your patterns. To sit with your shadows. To clean the wreckage of your past, not with guilt, but with presence. Because the freer you become internally, the less control the world has over you. That is why the system teaches you to avoid yourself. Because a man who knows himself cannot be manipulated. The fire of discipline Discipline is not a punishment. It is the forge. You do not build freedom in moments of inspiration. You build it when no one is watching. When it's dark, boring, lonely, quiet. That's when you rewire your identity. Waking early, sitting in stillness. Choosing what's hard but true over what's easy but hollow. This is sacred labor. You are not building habits. You are breaking spells. Spells of laziness. Spells of self-pity. Spells of distraction and doubt. Each act of discipline is a crack in the cage. Each choice of truth over comfort is a chisel to the chains. And slowly, you remember your power. Why most will never pay IT? Because this path strips you bare. You lose your stories, your excuses, your crowd, your comforts, and most people don't want truth that bad. They want relief, not rebirth. They want the image of freedom without the internal cost. They want to seem powerful, not become powerful. So they quit. Not loudly, quietly. They go back to drifting, back to busy, back to sleep. But the awakened cannot go back. Because the illusion no longer satisfies. The lies no longer soothe. The noise no longer drowns the knowing. You've seen too much, felt too much, remembered too much. You know now that anything less than truth is death in slow motion. Legacy reflection. Ask yourself quietly, what part of my life is still borrowed? What comfort am I protecting at the cost of my evolution? What version of myself must I let die so the real one can live? Sit with that. Don't rush it. Don't explain it. Let it break you, because on the other side of that break is the beginning of real life. This is not about success. This is not about status. This is about something ancient, something eternal. Freedom as your birthright, not granted by man, not achieved by chance, but reclaimed through fire. We've crossed the shadows. Now we stand before the door. The chains have been revealed. The price has been named. But none of it matters unless you choose. It's an unlocking. There is no key out there. No mentor. No book. No government. No amount of money. No system you can buy or follow or vote for that will grant you freedom. Because the truth is, you were never missing the key. You are the key. You were simply trained to forget. The moment you realize everything changes when you stop asking, what do I do? And start asking, who must I become? Because you don't get freedom. You become the kind of person who cannot live any other way. Not by force, not by rebellion, but by resonance. Freedom becomes the only frequency you can exist in. Anything else tastes like poison. And when you reach that point, the world may still try to control you, but it can't reach you anymore. Because you shifted at the root. Symbolic image. The lock turning from inside picture a door you stood before 1,000 times. You tried pushing. You begged for help. You blamed the door. You cursed the system. And then, one day, you stop. You breathe. You become still. You place your hand gently on the handle, and you feel it. The lock was always on the inside. It turns with ease. Not because the door changed, but because you did. You became ready. You became responsible. You became worthy. Not in the eyes of the world, but in the truth of your own soul. The mark of the freed. So how do you know you're free? You don't need to prove. You don't need to explain. You don't need to convince. You simply live differently. You walk through life with quiet clarity. You choose based on truth, not trend. You act from vision, not reaction. You move with intention, even when no one is watching. And when chaos comes, as it always will, you are not shaken. Because your anchor is internal. You have become sovereign. Final reflection. Breathe deeply now. Let silence settle. And ask yourself, what would change? If I lived as if I were already free, would your posture shift? Would your decisions sharpen? Would your words weigh more? Would your future feel nearer? This is not imagination. This is memory. Your soul has always known the way. You simply need to remove the noise, the scripts, the lies, to return to it. Freedom is not a destination. It is a state of being. And the moment you choose it, truly, you will never again be at war with yourself. You've carried the code all along. Now you have the key. Use IT.